Hello class, this lesson is about evolution of population, standard 3, and this section is all about the major genetic causes for evolution. So we talked about, the physical reasons of why there's evolution or natural selection, but genetically, why is there evolution? Like, why do our genes change? What is our DNA, how is it affected by genetics? So if you go into the next slide, the minor causes of evolution, we're going to talk about 5 causes. Okay, so if there's anything you need to know about this video is that there's 5 causes. The first cause is a mutation, which we've talked about before. It's a rare, very small change in allele frequencies. So the last video we talked about the frequencies of certain alleles or certain genes. Mutation is just a very random freak occurrence and change just randomly. The second cause, minor cause of evolution, is non-random mating. So in a population, so if we had a group of people and had them mate for offspring, non-random mating is sort of like they call it artificial selection, where those that mate it's not random. So you tend to have a different type of offspring or evolution because your mating is not random. It affects the genotypes, meaning remember we had like uppercase A, upper and lowercase a, and 2 lowercase a's in the last video. The frequency is still the same, but the genotypes, like you might have more of one than the other because you don't have a random mating. And the 3 major causes, which we'll go over: natural selection, which we've talked about, and then 2 new ones, genetic drift and gene flow. So the major cause number 3, so remember 1 and 2, mutations and non-random, those are like, they cause evolution, but they don't do a lot. Here are the 3 major ones. Natural selection. So we talked about this before. Individuals with variations better suited to the environment pass more alleles to the next generation. So we're saying that those that are able to survive more based on their sort of, I guess you could say like their features. Based on their features, they're more likely to survive. So here's like a finch again, and there's that beak. So here's a graph and a study of different birds. So in 1976, their beak depth, like how deep their beaks went, was only about a little bit less than 9 millimeters. And then there was this drought where, I guess you could say in this drought, those with longer beaks tended to survive more because they have more access to food and more access to water. So in 1978, all of a sudden the whole population shifted to longer beaks, and this was only after 2 years. So those that have are more fit, quote unquote more fit, and more apt to survive, they pass on their alleles better than those that don't. So that's called natural selection. Genetic drift, the definition is small populations have a greater chance of fluctuations in allele frequencies from one generation to another. So genetic drift meaning if you have a small population, they have a greater chance that your allele frequencies or types are a little bit different. I want to talk about 2 specific ones, one called the founder effect and one called the bottleneck effect. So here's an example of genetic drift. It's not exactly the best example. I'll give you another one in class, but in the left box, as you see here, this is the allele frequency. You're more likely, you have a 70% chance you're going to have the red allele and the 30% chance you have the white allele. Let's just say only these 5 have offspring. So because only these 5 have offspring, they tend to be more reds. And now the frequency becomes 0.5 and 0.5, where it once was 0.7 and 0.3. Now, if only these 2 left and had offspring, all of a sudden your whole population turns to red because these are the only 2 that mate. That changes your whole frequency from, what was once 0.7 now to completely 1, and the other one is 0. So depending on, again, genetic drift is only a small percentage of the population reproduces. So choosing these 5 changed the whole population, and having just these 2 mate change the whole population so everything is red. And now all of a sudden there's no such thing as a white or pink flower because only these 2 passed on or left offspring. The founder effect, I think you guys will find this pretty interesting, is an example of genetic drift. It's when a few individuals are isolated from the population, so certain alleles are under or overrepresented. So this is a sample population, these blue and red, these blue dots and these red squares, and let's just say the founder effect is sort of like a group of people sort of migrate to a new area and just those people. So let's just say from this big population, like the reds go off somewhere or the blues go off somewhere, or maybe only a little bit of blues and some reds go off somewhere. when they repopulate somewhere else, that means their population is going to evolve. They're not going to have the diversity they once have, and now you're going to have sort of weird changes in evolution. So this is a great example. This is called polydactyly. An extra poly meaning many, and dactyl meaning, or digit meaning finger. In the Amish population, they actually have a large percentage or representation of people with 6 fingers. Part of the reason why is because the Amish people separate themselves from the rest of the population. So compared to the rest of the human population, they actually have more people with extra fingers, and also dwarfism, or a lot of shorter people, height challenged people. Just because they're so separated from the rest of us, that type of stuff happens more frequently. The allele frequency for this type of stuff is more frequent for Amish people, especially in Pennsylvania. That's the founder effect, when a small percentage of people leave off and go somewhere, and that their alleles become more expressed than the other ones. And then there's the bottleneck effect. A bottleneck meaning, you have an original population and something happens where a lot of the population is limited or dying, so the surviving population is very small and misrepresented. The most common type of bottleneck effect, we're talking about sudden change in an environment, and that drastically reduces the population size and then changes completely the population. So for example, these North elephant seals, they're hunted nearly to extinction in California. We had different colors, like this one's like a little bit darker, this one's brown. With all of them dying, the color sort of changed because only a certain type was still alive. That's called the bottleneck effect. And then the 5th major cause, so we've gone through 4: mutations, non-random mating, natural selection, and genetic drift. The 5th one is called gene flow, and it sounds almost like genetic drift. Gene flow is when a movement of fertile individuals between populations. So they could gain and lose alleles, and then they could reduce the genetic differences between certain populations. So we're talking about in a population, same species, they move between themselves in this large population, and then the genetic differences sort of become reduced. So say for example, if I go backwards, like to this one, our founder effect, it's sort of as if like these red ones and blue ones, they sort of move within the population and they become less distinct. What if everybody became pink all of a sudden? That's called gene flow, a movement of fertile individuals between a population, and the genetic differences inside of it is sort of reduced. So that is the standard. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys in class, and take care.